You have 8 minutes.
Thank you, Garamaga. Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And welcome to Minister Norma Foley here today to speak on senior cycle reform of the Leaving Cert. Minister, Ireland as a country ranks so highly across the world in terms of its education attainment and just the quality of education that we deliver. And of course, we see this both at our post-primary secondary school level, but also at third level, which is really fantastic. You know, Ireland ranks high over the European average, you know, even when it comes to qualifications at third level, both in Europe and globally. And Minister, in your statement, I welcome your objective to innovate, improve and inspire. You know, from September 2025, you've noted here that, you know, young people and students going into 5th year will be able to avail of this brand new sort of reform of the Leaving Cert. And as you mentioned, up to 120,000 students. You know, it is really critical that what we see here in terms of reform of the Leaving Cert is to get away from the pressure of obviously the CAO points driving pressure on students and on parents, and I know that that's your goal as well. And you speak here, I think, in your presentation on externally assessed components outside of written exams. And I suppose that's looking at the State Examinations Commission, of course, that would be reviewing this. And I know that they do wonderful work, particularly pressurised, of course, around the time of the Leaving Cert and so on. But I suppose if I might ask you, potentially what you envisage here in terms of externally assessed components. I take it to be continuous assessment. I take it to be over perhaps the 2 years, both 5th year and Leaving Cert. But will this include essays, lab work? You know, how do you see this working? Will it be online? How will you streamline it, I suppose, for the State Examinations Commission? And I suppose just in relation to the State Examinations Commission, are we looking at additional staff, or what sort of systems can we put in place there to assist with this, this development that you'll be looking at, I suppose, in 2 years' time? In relation to the new subjects, very, very welcome around climate action, drama and theatre studies. We have our own town hall in Ballinasloe and a great musical society and a town band ourselves in Ballinasloe. So I know that across both Roscommon and Galway will be very, very welcome. Climate action, of course, on every young person's mind, particularly with everything they see in the news every single evening. And as you mentioned here, PE and computer science were one of those more recently added subjects. Minister, the engagement here as well that you reference is very, very welcome with all stakeholders. And I know that you included the student voice as well, particularly during COVID. I really hope going forward, and I very much welcome that that would be part of your engagement in terms of stakeholders. And of course with the NCCA, the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment. I know my colleague Minister Simon Harris in the Department of Further and Higher Education noted the very important forum that was put together as well with yourselves, Minister, and with your department in terms of the Senior Cycle Redevelopment Partners Forum. And really, the goal here, like we said, was about reducing the points pressure in CAO, but also looking at all of these pathways for young people once they complete their Leaving Cert. So, of course, the apprenticeship programme, further education, and that this is available like this on the CAO website, but also perhaps with our career guidance. And I suppose, Minister, if you have any thoughts around potentially with career guidance in our secondary schools, you know, with these new subjects coming on stream, with the continuous assessment, are there ways that we can work with our young students to maybe think about those placement programs, perhaps in this new transition year that you might be looking at as well in terms of placements and so on? It's very welcome, Minister, to have the results in August. I know students will have been very delighted to have that. And I know that with the Senior Cycle Reform, Minister, that you're delivering here in the Department of Education, that we are going to offer so much choice to our young people. You know, it's going to be flexible. It means that, of course, the assessment is not going to be 2 years of work, all hinging on the outcome of 1 day of written exams. And it really means that students of all abilities will be able to give their all. Minister, students are really ready, and we want them to be ready, our young people, to be ready to explore and discover the world and to take up their career of choice, or, you know, to do what they would best suit them and their abilities and their skills and their talent. And that can be in so many ways. And it's just about those supports. And sometimes I think it's about engagement with parents as well around this. I think that's really important about how we want to see our children succeed in life and what success looks like for our young people. And sometimes that has to engage with parents and maybe the Parents' Council and the Board of Management, as well as our young people. I do think there's many stakeholders, as you've mentioned before, in this. Our students, of course, are the leaders of the future. They're going to be taking active roles in society. Cathaoirleach, they'll be sitting in your chair up there in a few years' time. And they'll be able to take on these challenges, and they'll have the knowledge and the skills and the problem-solving abilities that we are going to be able to give them, that your department, Minister, will be able to give these young people going forward. They'll be able to take on apprenticeships, they'll be able to take on further and higher education, they'll be able to take a year out if they need to, hopefully, and then decide what they want to do with their lives going forward. Minister, you've spoken here about the fact that 7 subjects, biology, physics, chemistry and business, will have non-exam assessment elements, and as you mentioned, from what I believe is essays and project work. Minister, the importance of this cannot be underestimated. There's also, I suppose, the idea that's been built up, and of course a practice that's been built up around grind schools and private education, I suppose, bringing students to prepare for the Leaving Cert exams. I do think it's very important to acknowledge that, you know, the continuous assessment, the external assessment component through the SEC will really evaluate a student's ability and potential over those 2 years. Finally, Minister, if I might take this opportunity briefly, if I may, to also just to raise some of the challenges that I have in a local capacity in the Ballinasloe area, which you may be aware of. I know that your office has been very good. I've raised this with your office this week, and as a Shannon commencement last week. Minister, the challenge just in Ballinasloe is particularly just around the primary school capacity. You've been very supportive of our school in Creanefa, a brand new school. We spoke about it probably the very first time I was in the Shannon, and we have planning permission approved, which is absolutely wonderful for the school. However, it is going to take 3 years. Our second national school, primary school, has 2 additional classrooms delivered this summer through the additional accommodation unit, which is absolutely wonderful. But Minister, we're running to standstill. Those 2 schools still have waiting lists in spite of the developments, some developments which will take 3 years to deliver. There is a concern and a strain, and Minister, I know you have visited Ballinasloe previously. You came to visit St. Teresa's Special School there. Minister, I really believe that now is the time, if possible, to meet with potentially the school planning area from the Department of Education, to meet with some of the school principals and the educational welfare officers that have come to me with serious concern just in the area. I would love to work, I suppose, with these groups, with yourself as Minister here and with the department to see how we can put a plan in place in September of next year. We have great new additional housing in Ballinasloe. We will be welcoming new families. However, our services in terms of primary school capacity is just very challenged at the moment. So, Minister, I would like to invite you again, potentially to Ballinasloe. You'd be very, very welcome. Or, if possible, to meet with groups in Dublin would be great as well. So, Minister, thank you for your time and your support.
There you go. Okay, well, thank you very much. And Cathaoirleach and Senators, just to say again, you know, I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be here, and I am very appreciative of the very positive and worthwhile engagement that always comes my way from all of the Senators here, and I know your absolute commitment to education and matters of education. I know education really is close to your hearts. The education system, including teachers, students and parents and the sector's agencies, continues to respond positively to new and evolving challenges, as I've already outlined. And I am confident that progress is continuing towards returning to normality and ensuring that a student-centred approach for meeting existing and new challenges is very much on the way. During the pandemic, students, teachers and families have faced uncertainty in relation to the state examinations. However, I believe we are now coming out the other side of it, and as I have previously outlined, we are more and more returning to pre-COVID, I suppose, circumstances or standards. I appreciate the very specific questions that you've all raised here today. I want to thank Senator O'Loughlin, who engages with me on an ongoing basis in relation to all matters to do with education, and I know I'm very happy to hear of your engagement, particularly with PBS in Newbridge, and because I do think that students are always going to be our best ambassadors for whatever programmes or initiatives we have in our schools, and I'm really charmed to think that you were impressed by the transition year students of PBS and their forthrightness and their ability to lead and to be to the front and, you know, showcase all that happens in transition year. So I welcome that, and I congratulate them on what they're doing there. You also raised issues, you know, around young people with additional needs and the great importance that must be attached to ensuring that they have appropriate transitions, as it were, whether it's from junior cycle to senior cycle, which we're currently working on as part of senior cycle reform. And equally so, I believe that we need to go beyond that in terms of having pathways towards work or other education opportunities, and we're piloting a number of those initiatives as well. And I think that's very important, that, you know, young people could be supported in making the right choices and the appropriate appropriate choices to meet their own needs, whether it's furthering in education or going out into the world of work. And I think we will learn a great deal from these various pilots. Again, I want to acknowledge your welcome for the new subject base and the arts and that, and I think that's important as well. And it is about equity, and it is about excellence, and it is about accessibility. And it's also to make sure that every young person can see themselves in the curricula that we offer. So I want to thank you for your ongoing engagement, and you specifically referenced AI, and I did say, I was in Strasbourg last week for a couple of days, and it was really interesting to engage with other ministers for education and to hear their take on what I believe will be an enormous opportunity for the world of education in terms of AI, but equally so there will be challenges with it, and the importance really of all of us, I suppose, learning how to armour ourselves against those challenges, but working collaboratively. So I'm very happy to work with colleague ministers, but also I think it's important that the unique experience of the Irish education system would be researched too, and so I'm very pleased that the State Examinations Commission are going to undertake that body of work, and it will inform where we are going forward. But in the interim, I do think it's important that we drive on with senior cycle reform. We could have made the decision to sit in our hands and to pause everything because of the advent of AI. I think that would have done a disservice to students. So we did take the decision, and I did announce last week that we were accelerating senior cycle reform. By 2025 now we'll have more than 120 students availing of a reformed senior cycle, 2 years earlier than we thought that they would do. And that's for the benefit of students. And at the end of the day, we're motivated only in education by one thing, and that's to benefit students, to enhance their capabilities, their opportunities, to maximise their talents, and that the world of education serves them. And I think by moving ahead with senior cycle reform, we're very much in that space. I welcome very much so Senator Warfield's contribution. I've got to say to you, Senator Warfield, you are speaking to somebody who is an enormous supporter of the arts, and I want to acknowledge your own ongoing commitment, and you've consistently raised that issue here and flagged that issue. I am hugely supportive of the vision, and you referenced here the Creative Youth Plan. I think it is so important that the place of the arts is embedded not just within senior cycle, but indeed with the ongoing experience right throughout our schools. So, for example, we have, and I hear what you say about, all the additional asks that are being put on staff in schools and everything else. So, for example, one of the programmes that I was very pleased as Minister to introduce was the BLAST programme, bringing live or local artists into the school. I think it's so important that students would get to meet living artists, whether they're in the world of music or the world of dance, or whether they're potters or seamstresses, whatever they happen to be, but that they're of their community, they're people they can identify with, and that the skills can be shared with them. And that it doesn't rest, or the burden isn't placed on the existing staff within the school, to find that talent or resource, that the talent is in the community, so draw on the community. And you're right, we have the creative schools, we have the creative clusters, we have, so we are more and more embedding it into the system, and we are supporting the system. So, for example, very much so, and I know it's an initiative that would very much please you, around, for example, the new subject area, in terms of film and theatre studies and drama and all of that. For too long, I have felt, and this is from my own experience, that students don't see themselves in the curriculum. They don't see their talents getting an opportunity to shine in the curriculum. And so therefore I think, the student who is talented in music, or the student who is talented in the world of drama, that is as valuable, I believe, as a student who has an equal talent in physics or an equal talent in English or French or whatever the case might be. So that, they should be of equal merit across the system, and that will happen with the reform in terms of the introduction of the new subjects. So the whole creative is very much so on our agenda, and I do assure you that we will continue to focus on the creative. I'm very happy to come back to you if there's any specific issues you want to raise with me in relation to that. Senator Dolan, again, thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of your ongoing engagement with me. Your views, for example, on the externally assessed components and what they will look like. I think they should be, and this will be a matter for the State Examinations Commission, so I will not preempt them, but the idea is in the main and in the round as opposed to being specific. So, for example, there will always be a place for the written exam. I'm very confident of that, but there has to be a place also for other type of skills. So, for example, that a student might be able to craft an animation, might be able to create an animation. A student I would know many students who would be very good maybe to record on paper how to run an experiment, might not be able to conduct the experiment, or the other way around. I think the student who can conduct the experiment, that's a very, very valuable skill, and it should be the skill that they have gained. So, in that area, we're looking at widening the type of additional assessment, but that will be solely for, I suppose, the responsibility of the State Examinations Commission. You referenced the importance of the student voice, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. I'm very proud to say that in the last 3 years we've made enormous strides in terms of student voice. The students now sit around the table, the decision-making table, with all of the other partners. That's not happened before in the Department of Education. They now sit on the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment. Never before in the history of the NCCA have students sat there. And equally so, within my own department, we have constituted a new unit, or a new wing, under the leadership of Professor Landy, who is working with students and working with the department so that all of our policies, all of our statements are student-proofed, and that the students are at the centre of it all. And to their credit, I want to say all of the new initiatives that we have brought to the fore, for example, the anti-bullying initiative that we brought to the fore, a very comprehensive document, but at the centre of that were a whole myriad of focus group engagements with students. I attended some of them myself, and I have to say to you, if you want to know what's wrong with the system, and if you want to know how to fix it, then you should go to those who are receiving the system, and that's the students. And I was just blown away, by how articulate they were, how invested they were, and how honest they were. And I think it's not before time that the department recognised that. I have to say, I've always recognised myself as a teacher that I've always felt that when you give students opportunities to shine and to be the best, they will take the opportunities. The trick is to make sure they get the opportunity. So more and more we're working hard to ensure that student voice is at the centre of all that we do. The TY experience and the taster programmes that we're hoping to introduce there, I think, and Senator O'Loughlin referenced it as well, the importance of TY and every student having an opportunity, if they so wish, to involve themselves in it, but also that they would have maybe the apprenticeship opportunities or whatever, and we're working on that, and the policy statement will be in place for September of 24. The engagement then with the widest range of people, I have to assure you that around the table there are the parents, there are the students, there are the staff, so it's the widest representation. Just in terms of the specific challenges in Ballinasloe, and I'm very fond of Ballinasloe and I had a very happy visit there, and just to say, you'll have to leave that with me and I'll come back to you, but I have very fond memories of my visits there, and excellence being delivered every single day, so I can work with you in that regard. Senator Emer, just in terms of I have to say to you, I like exactly the way you've positioned this, that education should be about the journey as much as the destination. I 100% agree with you there. You referenced the junior cert reform and where we are. I'm going to tell you there are conflicting views around the CBAs and how many CBAs there should be. Currently there is one now, and I think the important thing is that however number are there, that they are to the benefit of the student. And during COVID, there were some accommodations made there. But ultimately, it must be what benefits the student and the student learning. And I have no issues with the accommodations we have made here and how they will impact and how they will shine a light on senior cycle reform. I think we can see more and more that in terms of senior cycle reform and redevelopment, we are leaning, if you like, on a lot of the learning that we've had from the junior cycle, so I don't have any issues there. Just in terms of, when we're going to get back to the pre-COVID and the adjustments that are there, I want to say that we've begun that this year. So, for example, for last year, for the previous set of Leaving Certificate students in 2022, there were 2 sets of adjustments on the exam papers. They were reduced this year. There was 1 set of adjustment. So bit by bit, we're moving back. And we have to move back, and I acknowledge that other jurisdictions have done things differently. Other jurisdictions also did things differently during COVID. But I think we can stand very proudly, I think, in how we managed the education system during COVID in terms of how our students, how our staff in the first instance showed enormous flexibility to ensure that education continued to be delivered. But equally so, where we had the opportunity, like for example during COVID, we provided an opportunity where there were the accredited grades, and then there were opportunities for students to lean on the accredited grades and also to sit the exams. I don't believe there was any other jurisdiction that managed to achieve that for students, that they had the opportunity to take written exams, and then there was the other opportunity as well. So step by step, we're very mindful of the need to return, and we're doing that step by step. Just in terms of the Dublin allowance, and look, this is something that has been consistently, I suppose, debated over the last while. I've always been open enough to say, you know, everything can be on the table, and we're happy, and we have introduced a whole suite of different measures around teacher supply and that, and you've referenced other ones as well. But in terms of the Dublin allowance, I'd have to say two things to you about it. That's born very much so of the London allowance, and when you look at comparatively, I suppose, whatever the salary would be available in London and the salary in Ireland, the present salary in Ireland matches what's available in London, including the London allowance. And secondly, I would say to you, it appears not to have solved the situation in London either. I just say that as in passing, so it's just an observation. And finally, I would say to you in relation to it, it would not be unique then to, we say, the school community staff. It would actually have to, in the interest of fairness, like it would have to, impact others, whether it's on Garda Síochána, those in healthcare, or whatever. So. But notwithstanding all of that, I say to you, we're prepared to look at everything, but we have to be mindful of where we stand with it as well. Justin, I'm glad you've raised the issue around the school books and at primary school, and I want to be very clear. I think, to be fair, and again I acknowledge the work that's been done on the ground in the schools to make this operational and to ensure that it would work. And I have seen it firsthand. I have met them over the summer as they prepared the books and got the books and everything else. And I really do want to acknowledge that, the staff in schools have been the flag bearers for this. Like, they've really made it work. I want to be 100% clear. It has nothing to do with the ICT funding. ICT funding was made available on the double to schools over 2 years. Double allocations over 2 years. Significant amount of funding has gone into schools. So there was no comparative, there's no relationship one way or another, and I think it was quite significant that over 2 years we managed to give double allocations in terms of ICT, and that's not to say that there won't be funding coming forward in the future in terms of ICT, okay, as well. And finally, just to, just the point you raised then, one of the schemes that we brought in, we'll say at post-primary level where teachers, if they wished that they could work the additional hours, and the point that you're making then that maybe those additional hours could be shared with another school if there was a cohort of schools either within the area or there was an umbrella of schools. I'm happy to look at that. We do also have a teacher share scheme. So, for example, within, we'll say, the local schools, or it could be an ETB set up or whatever, that, teachers could be shared if it was a subject that was causing difficulty, that whatever way the timetables could be worked, they could be 2.5 days in one school, 2.5 days in another, a teacher share scheme. But I'm just saying that that's one type of scheme that operates. But specifically, you're talking about those who have the additional hours, if they wish to work them, that they could be shared. Very happy that we would look at that and with other measures. So, in conclusion, Cathaoirleach, I just want to thank you for the courtesy, as always, that I receive here, and for your ongoing interest in all things to do with education. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Ask the acting leader when it's proposed to sit again.
Tomorrow at 11:30.
10:30.
10:30. Tomorrow at 10:30.
Is that agreed by everyone? The House stands adjourned.